Hello, YouTube. This is Mike, and this is the four things that heal BPD and NPD abuse. This channel is devoted specifically for neurotypicals, people who don't suffer from a personality disorder, who do not suffer from a personality disorder, who have been in or are currently in a relationship with somebody who suffers from BPD and or NPD. And I am here to tell you what I did to completely 100% recover from the damage in that relationship. And so, if you want to learn more about that, then do the four things. What we're going to talk about today is that age old controversy of what is the difference between BPD and NPD. And no, this person's not borderline, they're a narcissist. Or no, that person's not a narcissist, they're borderline. And so, I put a link in the description from a world recognized psychologist, a professor of psychology, and he talks about borderline personality disorder and secondary psychopathy. So, you know what a psychopath is? People throw these terms around, uh, narcissist, psychopath. They throw them around and use them the same because most people, don't don't need to figure out the difference, and all they know is that somebody has hurt them in a really destructive way, and so we just throw out the label narcissist. And so people really don't understand really what that means, especially when it comes to BPD. So please watch that video so that you can understand what I think is an extremely important point. And that point is this discussion about what is the difference between a narcissist and a borderline. When it comes to being in a romantic relationship, the end result is identical. And this is what creates the confusion, because you've been told that no, narcissists have no empathy and borderlines have empathy. And in fact, borderlines make this argument all the time. They will say, I am not a narcissist, I am not a psychopath, I have empathy. So again, it bugs the crap out of me. Now, it bugs the crap out of me because it muddies the water. When you are in a relationship with a borderline, it is very confusing. It creates a actually very traumatic, toxic form of cognitive dissonance, which is that you know that the person that you just dealt with yesterday really did love you. They loved you with everything that they had. They meant everything they said and they did. And today there's a completely different person who's acting psychopathically towards you. And so you have cognitive dissonance because you can't help, as a non disordered person, you can't help but think that they must be rational. They must know what they're doing. They must understand it. You have the assumption, which is true for people who are neurotypicals, that if somebody has empathy, you can bank on that empathy. That's going to be there tomorrow. It was there yesterday. It's here today. You can predict how they're going to act. And the borderline seemingly switches from a completely empathetic person to somebody who has no empathy and is psychopathic. And you can't figure it out. So what people do, because it's understandable, but it's immature and it's misinformed. What people do is they then go, oh, well, then that person wasn't borderline, they were NPD. And the immature, misinformed, superficial understanding is that people with NPD have no empathy, they are evil, and they plan out your demise. So that means they were love bombing you for the specific purpose of setting you up so that they could feast off of you, like John Wayne Gacy. John Wayne Gacy obviously is a psychopathic NPD, clearly. And so they think that if you've been with somebody who you thought was a borderline, and then you experience their psychopathic inner child, what ends up happening is that in order to make sense, you go, oh, well, that they must be NPD because obviously they planned it out. They planned it out from the beginning. And the reason you feel that way is because the borderline seemingly waited to change on you, to split on you. They seemingly waited until the perfect storm when you were the most vulnerable you could possibly be. You were the most attached to them you could possibly be. You had finally learned to trust them completely because they coaxed it out of you. And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, at the worst possible time, like for me, Christmas Eve or your birthday or the death of your mother, in the case of Amber Heard, they turn around and they act like a psychopath. And so what happens with the partner of the borderline is until they have either given up on the relationship or the borderline has discarded them permanently, which, by the way, will happen. I don't care how many decades it takes. If you're with an untreated borderline, at some point they will discard you permanently. It may take a long time, but it will happen. And so what happens is when the relationship first ends, the partner will continue to hold on to the hope that their borderline partner is rational, has empathy, and is just in a lot of pain. And if I do it right, I can get them to come back and I can fix it. And then when it becomes clear that the borderline is not going to come back, that they've moved on, that they're married to somebody else, and they've discarded you completely, then this is what I've seen as when I've done this. So I know because I've watched it happen as well as I went through it myself. When it becomes clear to you that you have been discarded and that there is no hope, then all of a sudden your rage and your anger, which it should, comes up, and you come to the conclusion that they are an evil psychopath who planned it out from the beginning. Because how could somebody, it was the most perfect setup. The love bombing was the perfect setup to then devalue, destroy, and discard you, which is exactly what NPDs do. It's exactly what a narcissist does. So when people say to me, when I'm explaining, what happened in my experience, they go, "Oh, well, obviously you were with a narcissist or somebody who was comorbid, because pure borderlines don't do that." These are people who don't understand what borderline personality disorder is. And the problem with that, if you're in a relationship, is if you don't fully understand, number one, that this is a mental illness that cannot be rationally addressed. You will not be able to fix them. You will not be able to finally get them to feel safe and love you. In fact, the very act of doing so will precipitate a psychopathic response. That's how they're built. They're built that when you love them, they destroy you. There's no middle ground. They are under the delusion that if you could just love them enough, they will finally stop being in pain. And you are under the delusion, because you've bought into it and whatever childhood issues you have, you've bought into the idea that if you just love them enough, they will turn around and love you back. And so if you can understand that, first off, if you have the awareness that the person that you're with has BPD, then you need to take it to the next step, which many people don't and resist and don't understand, which is that if they have BPD, it means that they are a psychopathic narcissist. That, I understand the intensity of that, because there are people with NPD that are not psychopaths. They have other things associated with their narcissism. They have NPD, but they're not psychopaths. Not every narcissist is a psychopath, but every psychopath is a narcissist. And every borderline is a secondary psychopath. And if you can understand that, then you will at least have the ability to separate. You will be able to see through the spell. You will be able to see through your tragic delusion, the hope that someday they'll come around and it'll be okay. If you understand that they have a mental illness that is in fact comorbid with psychopathy. So when people say there's a difference between somebody who has BPD and somebody who has BPD comorbid NPD, you're just repeating yourself. Because borderline personality disorder by definition means comorbid psychopathy. That is what makes a borderline. They are a extremely damaged, fragile codependent who also has a narcissist psychopath protector underneath. And so people also misuse the word covert narcissist. Covert narcissist does not mean a narcissist who's hiding and is hiding their psychopathy. That's an overt narcissist, right? A covert narcissist is not somebody who's an evil genius planning it out. It's somebody that their narcissism is hidden even to them. And so when it's released, it comes out of the shadows. This is why borderlines often don't remember their psychopathic episodes. You think they're lying. You think that they're being the evil covert narcissist who's saying, no, I never did that. I don't remember that. I do remember doing that. No, they don't remember it. They don't remember doing it. They've dissociated. They have another personality. They are as close to multiple personalities as you can get. They have another personality in there. It is a defense mechanism. They're trying to protect themselves, and so they've created this horrific psychopathic monster that sits in the back waiting to be called upon. And the moment that the borderline starts to feel emotionally vulnerable, which kicks in their fear of abandonment and their simultaneous fear of being enmeshed or devoured by you, that panic then sets the message for the psychopath to come in front and defend the little borderline codependent. So you're dealing with two people. So again, watch the video. I put it below here. This is a recognized expert, world-renowned expert in the field. And if you can accept that sweet, beautiful borderline. Again, Amber Heard is a good example. Johnny Depp, he doesn't realize it, but he marries her during the initial, which is the best one. There's only one. The initial idealization phase where you're being loved bombed, sometimes for years. And he doesn't know that there's another person in there. He doesn't know that there's a psychopath in there. He hasn't experienced the psychopath yet. All he knows is that for however long he's been with her in this whirlwind romance, she takes his boots off when he comes home and gives him a glass of wine. And she's catering to every single whim and desire he has. And he has no idea that this is going to change. And she believes every moment. She's not planning it out. This is what you need to understand. Now, if she were a pure NPD psychopath, that's all, then we could make the argument that, yeah, she was planning it out from the beginning. She saw all of his money and she was going to destroy him and take his money and et cetera, et cetera. Except you look what happened. She hasn't done a very good job, has she? She's done a very poor job. She's destroyed her life, destroyed her reputation, destroyed her career as a result of this. This is not the work of a brilliant, evil genius. This is the work of a borderline who doesn't have any clue what they're doing and probably doesn't remember half of the stuff that she's hearing coming out in these recordings. But again, if you guys can get over the childish, simplistic, superficial understandings of this and stop with the she's not a borderline, she's a narcissist. I'm not a narcissist, I'm a borderline. I have empathy. You have to understand that it's intermittent. With borderlines, you're dealing with here's a better word, an intermittent psychopath. It means that there's this damaged little emotionally reactive, very needy, loving codependent, very fragile, needy codependent, and then there's this psychopathic narcissist. And they all come in one package. And it's called borderline personality disorder. So watch the video so you understand it. Let me address the comment which spurred it on. And again, this isn't going to go away because this misunderstanding is built in. People have a desire to misunderstand borderlines because it's our desire to try and rationalize the cognitive dissonance within us. We can't understand it. That's why it's so important you understand that this is a personality disorder, not somebody who has some issues. This is a personality. There's something broken. There's some parts missing upstairs. There's nobody home. So there's nobody to appeal to. There's nobody that you can rationally work it out with. So this person says, in regards to my video, does Amber Heard have borderline personality disorder? He says, I feel that Amber definitely has narcissistic personality disorder. And then he's going to tell us why. He says, there's nothing about herself that she hates. And then he says, she's always looking down. So what that means is this person is going off armchair behavioral psychology, which tells you that if somebody looks down, it means that they're lying. So he's trying to say she's lying. She's an evil genius narcissist. So what that means is that you think that she is conscious the whole time. And the need to feel that way comes from, number one, misunderstanding, misinformation about these personality disorders. But it also comes from a desire to explain to yourself why somebody could be so psychopathic. And it makes you feel safe if you can make sense of it. And if somebody says, no, they're an evil genius, they know what they're doing, they planned it all along, when they pretend to love you, they are lying to you, it makes it easy to understand. That's why it's simplistic, childish, and misinformed. Because the actual truth is far more horrific. The actual truth that a borderline can honestly love you with everything that they have, that they truly want to make it work. They really do want you to be the one. And then they themselves find themselves bushwhacked by their own malformed self-defense instincts, which then force them to dissociate and come after you and narcissistically destroy you. That is far more tragic, and it is far more difficult to understand. And this is why borderlines themselves will get very hurt, they'll get very upset, and they feel very misunderstood, and they'll say, you don't understand. I'm full of love. I'm full of empathy. And so they'll argue with me, you don't understand. I'm full of empathy. I'm not like that. I'm not an NPD. And I'm not saying that you didn't mean it when you said it. I'm saying the problem is the empathy that borderlines have doesn't last. They don't have the ability to hold on to their empathic being able to understand and feel for others when they're stimulated. And if they dissociate, they will forget. They'll forget that they loved you. And so it must be horrific for them. We might even say it's worse for them because they can't turn it off. If you're non-disordered and you've been through it, you still have neuroplasticity. You remember, you still have an identity, and you can go and get help and you can heal. Do the 4 things and you'll heal. Borderline does the 4 things. It's going to help them, but it's not going to cure them of their BPD. So there's nothing about herself that she hates. That is what you say to comfort yourself. You've obviously, I'm assuming, been hurt by a narcissist, and it makes you feel safe to separate yourself from them when you say they plan it out. They're evil geniuses. They're doing it to you on purpose. They were doing it to you the whole time. Now, this doesn't take away the reality that borderlines are psychopathic and they are narcissists. So when they are confronted like this, of course, she's looking down, and that could mean that she doesn't remember. And it could mean that she's lying, and it could mean that she is, because she's in court, because she's being accused of, she's being basically mortified, her narcissism is being mortified in front of the world, then of course, it's very likely that she is in a psychopathic state. So, my friend, that doesn't mean anything. The fact that she's looking down, even if you're right, and on a simplistic nature that means that she's lying, even if that's the case, it doesn't mean that she didn't mean it when she said it, when she was love bombing him. And it doesn't mean that she doesn't hate herself. In fact, you have a misunderstanding about narcissists. Because what creates narcissism is extreme self-hatred. So you're misinformed. And I encourage everybody to get some education. Click on the link below and watch, or click on the link in the description and watch Sam Vaknin explain what you may not understand. And if you want to heal, this guy goes on to say, there are two narcissists that I've known all my life. I've been putting their behavior into perspective. You need some help. So this is part of your healing. Your need to superficially understand narcissists as a way of separating and getting over your pain. That is going to be done not by studying them. It's going to be done by looking at you. Do the four things. If you've had two narcissists that you've known all your life and they've damaged you, you've been toxically traumatized, and you need to do the four things, in my experience. Otherwise, you're going to be spending all your life trying to figure them out, and it's not going to heal you. That's my take. Take it for what it is. Accept it, not accept it, completely up to you. All right, that's it. Somebody else asked me, as I said, can you please do a video on whether or not, can you please do a video on the NFL players that have been, I don't even know how that comes about. Can you please do a video on the NFL players who have been diagnosed with BPD? Again, this isn't all there is to know about BPD channel. I have no interest in NFL players with BPD. I have no interest in that. What I have interest in is what happens when you're in a relationship with somebody who has BPD. And the reason why that's important is because I needed to find that out for my own healing. I get attacked by somebody who's got some serious problems. I don't know what. Here's an interesting one. This has come up, and I think this person has said this numerous times. But there are people out there that have an attachment to this, and I haven't figured it out yet. This person says, a person can suffer no trauma in childhood and still be BPD. Read a study that said, now bear in mind, this person wants me to read one study. Read a study that said 70% NPD were born that way. The part of the brain that deals with empathy is missing. More are suggesting the same for BPD. Part of the brain is different on scans. 3 people I've known with BPD never had bad trauma or neglect in childhood, but one's mother I suspect to be NPD. So right there off the bat, this person does not understand infantile and childhood trauma. Because you can't say in one breath that this person suffered no childhood trauma, but their mother had narcissistic personality disorder. By definition, that person has been traumatized. And the way to create a borderline is either by a mother who's a borderline, which again is a secondary psychopath, or by a mother who is a narcissist. That's probably the best way to create a borderline. So thank you for telling me exactly what I've been saying. And just because you know somebody who has BPD and they say that they never had any childhood trauma, no, I was never beaten with a spoon, I was never sexually assaulted, I was never hit in the head, therefore they had no trauma. Again, you have no real understanding of what childhood trauma is. I grew up in an extremely dysfunctional home. I was never beaten by my parents, and yet I suffered very serious childhood trauma, narcissistic childhood trauma. So then it makes me ask why you feel the need to keep saying this. And I'm trying to figure out what kind of person would do that. This is somebody who maybe has BPD and doesn't want to demonize their parents. This is a parent who has a child who has BPD, and you can't tolerate the idea that you may have traumatized them. And so you will say, no, I didn't do anything. They were born that way. It's not my fault. You're taking a partial truth, which is, it is true that people who have BPD and NPD, they may have a congenital issue in the brain that when they experience neglect, that can trigger BPD or NPD. There are people who have been raised by borderlines and narcissists who did not end up having that personality disorder. They have a lot of other issues, serious codependence and psychological issues, but they don't have a neurological disorder like BPD or NPD. So just because you say on scans it shows that they had some brain abnormality at birth that contributed to that, it doesn't mean it caused it. And it doesn't mean that there wasn't any trauma. So I don't know why you need to minimize childhood trauma this way. There's obviously something going on. If I had you in a room and I could ask a bunch of questions, I could figure it out. But I can't, and I'm not interested in doing that. So, and anyways, there we go. All right, I've got out all of my issues for the day associated with this, and now I can get on with my day. Okay, there you go, guys. Go watch the channel. Watch if you want to really understand borderlines to the point. And the whole point of it is not so that you get caught up in the gossip of trying to figure out borderlines. I'm not interested in that either. The point of it is so that you can understand that there's no hope, it's not going to work, and that you are damaged and you need help. Go do the 4 things. There it is. Have a great day. I'll see you whenever I see you.